Hello, Kaylee Rose here. Welcome to day 2 of the Suburban Prepper Mom Challenge. Today we're going to talk about your warmth and water plan. So having heat, lighting, and water are key if the utilities go out. You could freeze or get dehydrated way faster than you would starve. First off, let's talk about simple ways you can store water using stuff you already have around the home. So, one thing I like to do is have a couple pop bottles filled up with water underneath all my sinks. I would use these if I didn't have water and we needed to flush toilets or do some basic hand washing, that kind of thing. Another thing I do is I have a few, I don't have piles and piles of these because I also want to be respectful of my space, but I've saved a few of my dishwasher detergent jugs. I've also done this with a couple old laundry detergent jugs and filled them up with water after I'm done using them. So this is what I've labeled as soapy water that I could use for washing dishes or washing some clothes, because there is a little bit of soap suds in the bottom left over from what was in here before. Another thing to think about is if you have mason jars that you are storing for the purpose of doing some canning or other dry food storage, but they don't have anything in them right now, is why don't you store them with water inside? So for example, here's some mason jars that don't have anything canned in them right now. I do have other jars with canned products, so these ones don't have anything right now, but you can't stack mason jars like Tupperware or find a way to reduce the space they take up. So if they're going to take up space anyways, how about just them take up space with water inside? I wouldn't seal the lid, just put the lid and cap on, just twist it shut, and you have some water that you can use in an emergency. Another one you definitely want to consider, especially for the summer, is having a rain barrel. I love having a rain barrel for reducing my water consumption when I'm watering my garden, and it's also a nice backup to have. And of course, rainwater that's sitting outside, you're not going to drink without boiling it or filtering it first, but it is a really useful source of water. The one caveat for rain barrels, though, is if you live somewhere like I do, where it freezes in the winter, you don't want to store a barrel full of water outside all winter, right? So you'll have to make that just a summer-only option for yourself, or you're going to have to find a way to store the water somewhere where it's warmer. So one thing you could do if you had a heated garage is you could empty out your rain barrel, use it all up for watering your garden beds before the fall or whatever, and then move that rain barrel into your garage and refill it again with water from your hose and have that as water storage over the winter. But you wouldn't want to do that unless you knew your garage was going to stay warm enough and the water wasn't going to freeze. Because if you let water freeze in rain barrels, of course, it'll expand and could break your rain barrel, which would be sad. So that's one thing to consider. So those are just a few ways to store water. And of course, if you're storing water, you will probably have to boil it or filter it before you drink it. Now let's talk about simple things you can purchase. I always recommend having some ready-to-go bottled water. Okay, so I'm just talking about the disposable, regular size water bottles. You can also buy 4-liter jugs of water. I like the bottle size because it's easy to distribute out to family members, and it's also easy to transport if you need to put some water in a backpack and go somewhere. The general rule of thumb is to have 1 gallon of water per family member. So you can think about that, if you want to have, say, a 72-hour or a 1-week supply of ready-to-go, I can drink this at a moment's notice water. I would just think about how many family members you have, how many water bottles you want per day for each family member, and store up that many bottles of water. And I've given you some basic math in the day 2 worksheet, so you can fill that out and decide how many bottles of water you want to store. So when it comes to storing the bottled water, make sure it's in a cool, dark place. And the water itself will last quite a while. Really, water doesn't go bad. What will start to happen though, and it won't happen as fast if you put it in a cool, dark place, but eventually the plastic from the bottles does break down and chemicals could leach into the water. So if you've stored water for years and years, just remember that you'll probably still need to boil it or filter it before you drink it. So we do just kind of like cycle through and buy more and occasionally use them. But I'm not using plastic water bottles all the time for environmental reasons. But I do just generally try to like keep a stock of them, but occasionally like start using them and refilling that stock so they're not getting too old. But they will last you. Like the water itself will last a very long time. But most of us don't have enough space to store water for an extended emergency situation. You're probably not going to buy bottled water for a year or 6 months of a water issue, right? So that's when water filtration gets really important to have on hand. There's two kinds of water filters I would have. I would have a family size filter that you can use in your home. And then I would also have a version that's very portable that can be thrown in a backpack and used on the go. So we have both. First off, just the small portable one. The one that seems to be the best on the market right now is the Sawyer Mini portable water filter. And that can, I think you can find it on Amazon for 30 to 40 bucks right now. So that's an easy thing, you know, make it a stocking stuffer or just buy it next time you're doing an Amazon purchase. It's an easy on the go thing to have. The portable water filter we have isn't on the market anymore, so there's no reason for me to show it to you, but definitely check out something like the Sawyer Mini. So for larger filters, the leading standard is the Berkey, which I'm going to show you now. And I am going to turn my phone around so you can see the Berkey filter behind me here. So I'm sorry if this is a bit shaky, I'm just holding my phone, but here is the Berkey water filter. And you know, one of the things I like to think about when it comes to investing in prepping products is this something that I will get regular day-to-day use out of? Or is it just going to sit somewhere until there's an emergency? So this one, I'm happy to say, I use it every single day. It's right next to my kitchen sink. We fill it up right here with the water, and we drink filtered water every day because why not? If you have an amazing water filter that's going to make your water so much healthier for you, why wouldn't you use it every single day, right? So we have the big Berkey. They come in a large variety of sizes. They all filter to the same quality regardless of the size, but the bigger the filter, the faster it's going to filter the water for you. So pretty much this big Berkey size that we have lasts me about 24 hours with our family of 5. And we have 2 filters. This one you could actually put in 4 filters, like there's room for 2 more if we wanted to, and then the water would filter faster, but then of course we'd have less space to hold the water. So we've decided that 2 is good enough for us, and it's worth it to buy probably backup filters too. You can also buy like a backup spigot in case this ever broke, if you want to make sure that this, you know, stays functional for you. So you can buy like the different parts separately from one another with the Berkey too. And so I'm fine with drinking room temperature water, but just as a side note, one thing we do is, since we have a SodaStream machine as well, is we often just fill up bottles like this from the Berkey. We stick it in the fridge so it gets cold, and then we can either drink cold flat water or carbonate the water if we want to make something a little bit fancier. So that's just not really a prepping thing, but that's just a side note. So here's some specs. I'll just read it out for you. It filters water extremely well. So these are all the things it filters out: pathogenic bacteria, E. coli, etc., up to 99.9999%. Woo! Viruses, parasites, herbicides, and pesticides, chlorine, detergents, organic solvents, THMs, I'm not going to try to pronounce the longer version of that, MTBEs, other VOCs, MBAs, cloudiness, silt, sediment, radicologicals, nitrates, nitrites, selenium and thallium, heavy metals, iron, foul tastes, and odor. So that's pretty awesome. I love that all that stuff is getting filtered out for me on a day-to-day basis, but the minerals and the good qualities of the water stay in there. So the final aspect of water we need to cover is transporting it. So if you're going to be getting something like the Berkey filter, so you can filter water, you don't have to store like months and months worth of water, then you're going to want a way to get water from somewhere. So in your worksheet, I've asked you a couple of questions. First off, where is your closest water source? And how will you get to it? Can you get to it without a vehicle? can you walk or ride a bike to that water source? And when you get there, how are you getting the water and transporting it back home? So, for example, me living in a small city, there are a few like neighborhood lakes around. So I could walk to my closest neighborhood man-made lake and get water from there. And I'd probably transport it in big water jugs in our toddler wagon. Just pull the toddler wagon with the jugs in it. That's probably the easiest way for me to transport water if I had to. Now, so just think about that. And you might want to think about buying some water containers, and these can be dual purpose. They can be things that you do take with you camping or use for other reasons. If you do want to save space, you can buy water storage containers that flatten down. So they still have a handle and they're still like safe to hold drinking water in, but they flatten down when not in use, so they're easier to store.